Hello and welcome to the Help Is Here podcast, brought to you by the Beyond Compulsion Academy. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about another program in the porn addiction recovery world. This program is called Porn Reboot, and Joe was once within this program. So what we're going to be doing is we're not here to just kind of rip the shit out of it. It's more, okay, let's analyse it from a methodology standpoint. The reason we want to do this is we've actually had quite a lot of guys who have done that program now join the Beyond Compulsion Academy. And they come to us and often they have a lot of misconceptions around how to solve this problem. A lot of them have spent between $5,000 to $10,000 at least already on that program, and it hasn't worked. You know, they've continued to relapse, they've continued to go around in circles, and they've actually ended up believing that there really is like something wrong with them. What I'd love to do with this episode is hopefully get the message out there that some of the approaches on the internet today are unsuccessful, they're ineffective, they're not helping people solve their porn addiction. So Joe, pleasure having you on the podcast again today. How you doing today? How you doing?
Brilliant, fantastic.
Doing all right?
Yeah.
Good man. Good to have you on. You did this program in the past, right? Do you want to just talk a little bit about it, your experience?
Yeah, cool. So in 2020, I joined the program known as Porn Reboot. It was around the COVID time, so it came in a pretty critical situation in everyone's life, I think. If you live in the Western world, especially, we all know sort of what the situation was. So, yeah, it was 2020 when I thought, you know, before that time, I'd been, you know, since 2016, trying the no-fap park, right? A lot of stuff wasn't working for me. I mean, definitely didn't work for my situation. So since 2016, I'd been on the no-fap forums a lot, in that constant state of comparison fatigue, you know, when you're seeing guys doing well on streaks and getting off porn and giving testimonials. I've been free for 6 months, I've been free for a year, all this stuff. And it really gets to you. You think, well, I've been trying so hard to stop pornography for so long now. And, you know, why doesn't it work? There must be something wrong with me. There must be something deeper. I need some more specialist help. I think that's sort of the natural way we would be inclined to think if we were in that sort of narrative. And unfortunately, a lot of us get into that narrative on our heads. So along came that critical year, 2020, start of COVID-19. And that was a time where, you know, I was in like a job. I was in the first, I think it was my second developer job. So I had money coming in. And at this point, I hadn't been a stranger to sort of buying high ticket sort of products before. And the next logical thing for me was, well, the biggest problem in my life right now is, you know, this problem I'm having. I can't stop watching porn. I feel that I'm trapped. I'm helpless. Why isn't it working? Why can't I stop? Why can't I get the results that I'm seeing everybody else get? You know, that's a bit of a nuanced situation in itself. But anyway, I'm in that position. I'm in that mental position. It's time to get serious, guys. It's time to get serious. Let's invest. Let's invest in a program. And that was the next thing. I'd been looking at this sort of brand for a while now. So that brand is Porn Reboot, Elevated Recovery. JK Emezi is his name. Really cool guy. I was on like a sort of a free call with him before this point, at one point, like back 2018. So I was pretty locked in on like the advice he was giving. At the time, it was very sort of intuitive advice, rational advice. I'm thinking, okay, this makes sense. What you're, you know, on the content that he was presenting, a lot of the narratives around porn was making sense, and it was kind of very relatable in the testimonials that he was giving. I couldn't afford it at the time though. So I think I'd been on a call before this, after this point, where I tried to see if I could afford it or not. I couldn't, but in 2020, I think something changed and I could get on a payment plan. So we got into the payment plan, started with the program, and it gets taken off from there. So I'm in this program, and I get started. It lasted for a year, and I'll get into that in a minute. And first of all, the thing I want to say is that this isn't going to be sort of a roasting session or anything. Like JK treated me very well. He was he looked after everyone in the group. He cares about guys. He really genuinely cares about what people are going through, and he let us all in that time stay for a year, because it's a 90-day program, and we can get into the day thing in a minute, but it was a 90-day program, but he allowed the program to sort of extend for the year, because he felt it was a pretty critical situation that we were all in, and so being locked in our houses, right? And he was a really good guy for that. And about him as well, like, he's really into getting us guys into starting personal development. He's in great freaking shape. You can see him now on his YouTube. He's a freaking workhorse. He showcases that on his YouTube channel as well. So he's, when it comes to the industry, I'd say when it comes to sort of the trends and everything, when it comes to the market, he's our senior. Like, it's clear cut. And so we're not gonna, I think it's gonna be safe to say that we can't come from that position of arrogance when we talk about this, but when it comes to the strategy and the product that I went through and many of the guys went through who then came to us after the fact years later, I think that's what we're going to get into today, because me having gone through that program and another program, and subsequently having all this data sets of other guys going through it, myself going through all these programs, understanding what works and what doesn't work in terms of stopped and staying stopped. This is the critical conversation that I think we need to have, because we get guys coming from that program increasingly now, and it's something that I felt we want to address. That's what we're here to do.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Is it's not, let's go like take the piss out of some random guy on the internet to like get some views. I think the fact of the matter is about 10 to 20% of our clients over the last 6 months, roughly, they have come from that program. Like, they've done that program at some point. I've had these conversations with guys. They have spent between $5,000 to $10,000. That's a lot of money for a program on porn addiction recovery that isn't getting people the results that they want. And it isn't because the person who's created that program is necessarily out here trying to scam people, or that he hasn't actually overcome porn addiction himself. He probably has, overcome porn. He probably is helping a lot of people in some ways. But the methodology, the thinking, the ideology behind some of those systems, they aren't getting people connected to the neural pathways which are required to overcome this problem. And instead, they're helping people with self-improvement, which is a very different thing to solve than dealing with compulsive desires. And this, it sounds bad, but I think it's a bit dangerous to have someone out there on the internet saying certain things about, slip-ups, for example, and continuing to perpetuate the idea that, like, slip-up is a part of recovery. Let's just talk about it. I'd be quite interested to learn more about that program as well, in terms of like what was good about it. Maybe we should start off there.
Yeah, excellent. We're going to get into all of that, so I'm excited to do that. I think before we get into it, if we're going to set a preface here, saying like, okay, perhaps when it comes to Beyond Compulsion Academy and Porn Reboot, what would you say would be the parameters? Because you mentioned slipping just then. What are we talking about here in terms of the mindset of going into each of these programs? So in BCA, we're more about getting hold of the problem in terms of, we see we hold ourselves to a certain standard where we see slipping as something that we don't want to do. And it comes into that sort of realm about what's managing addiction or whatever. But the way I see it is, in BCA, it's about stopping and staying stopped, not engaging in pornography again, not slipping, not naturally relapsing, if you want to call it that, how would you sort of frame that?
Yeah, good question. So what we have on the internet is a culture nowadays which perpetuates the idea of helplessness, that people are not in control of themselves, that slipping up is something that just happens to you, that maybe your brain's being hijacked, that if you don't do all these random like self-improvement things, there's a chance that you're just going to like naturally relapse. But like the truth is that if you know how to re-engage the rational part of your mind, if you know how to deal with the addicted part of the mind, like if you have a strategy that's purely focused on that moment of compulsive desire, so that moment when the mind's busy and you've got all these thoughts and maybe there's like unanswerable questions going on, junky thoughts, and you really want to engage in a compulsive behaviour, like if you're taught how to deal with that exact moment, you can be in a position where you're literally in control of yourself 100% of the time, and you eliminate the idea of slip-ups entirely. The other thing with slip-ups is they're built on the premise that the main thing is just like you're helpless, like you're out of control, like you don't have the ability to like stay on your own 2 feet. But like slipping up never happens in addiction recovery. It's not. It's such like junky thinking to believe in slip-ups that like if you're telling people on the internet like you're just gonna slip up or like oh how to deal with slip-ups, just even using that language, it's just like feeding the addicted part of the mind. It's working against people. And that is, and then that makes our job a bit harder because then we've got to teach people to like unlearn slipping up and like use different language and start saying like, okay, well, actually I let the addicted part of the mind, choose for me, or, I chose to engage, and like take that ownership back of your mind, like take ownership back and take responsibility back of like, you are the one in control here. Like you have the potential to literally always be in control of yourself. So there's a lot there. I don't know. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. I think because of that, having slip up as something that's okay to do, unfortunately, put me in the position post porn reboot. Post the porn reboot program.
Well, they're kind of synonymous, porn reboot, right. Porn relapse, same sort of thing. No,
unfortunately, precisely. But this is the thing: is that when I, was in that mindset of slip ups are okay within the porn reboot program, and then post porn reboot program, I was still in the addiction. I was still relapsing, even perhaps if I'd worked on some of the self-improvement stuff and self-development stuff that I had worked on in porn reboot, which we'll get onto. This culture of having slip-ups is something that's okay, unfortunately put me in the position of a decline post the program. So when I went on the program and then exited the program, I was in a worse position than I was before I started, unfortunately. And this is just the consequences of the strategy, with all good intentions intended. Unfortunately, on the other side of the program, I just was in a bit of a worse mental position. And so, yeah, I think we're gonna get onto it. So,
what do you mean you were in a worse mental position? Right, let's talk about that bit.
Yeah, because I had paid however much I paid, right? So it was, $8,000 for that program. Mm-hmm. And so I spent all this money. I'd spent a year in this program. I spent a year learning all these skills, going on calls, chatting with an accountability partner, doing worksheets, being active in a group, right?
What sort of skills?
We'll get onto it.
But essentially, I'm a bit eager today.
Nah, minor. I think essentially we have it. So I'd done all this stuff.
Yeah.
And despite doing all this stuff, leaving the program, I was still in an addiction, a full-time porn addiction, full mental conflict, still engaging. And it's sort of like, well, there must be something wrong with me, because all this stuff didn't work. All this time got put in and I'm still in the addiction. There must be something wrong with me. I must have not worked hard enough. I must have thought about this incorrectly. I must have not been able to sort of, I don't know, maybe it just didn't work for me. Maybe there's something maybe I took the wrong turn, right? So that's the mental position that I was put in, and that's what I mean by it was all worse after that. What were you saying?
No, that's good to hear, because I think this is the thing, even with like the beyond compulsion method, right? Like those thoughts you just described of like, what's wrong with me? Like, am I doing things right, etc. If someone were hypothetically to relapse after like 2 weeks in Beyond Compulsion Academy, they might still have those exact same thoughts, because those thoughts are a symptom of the addiction, hence the need for the training around how those thoughts are coming from the addicted part of the mind. They're natural, they're to be expected, they're part of being in an addiction. But sounds to me like you were trained on certain skills in that program, which I'm sure were great for your life in other areas, but you weren't trained on understanding that those kind of thoughts you've just described are all part of the addiction, because they're coming from the addicted part of the mind to try and get you to relapse.
Precisely. And the thing is, with BCA, you get straight into that. So that unwiring of these certain things, and that rewiring also takes a lot of time. But with BCA, the way that, Mary handles it, she's been doing it for 35 years, and yourself, you've learned all this, and now you're, essentially the instructor of it. You digest it really quickly, and a lot of the rewiring sort of happens very quickly on the education level, which everyone can attest to, especially if you've gone through Porn Reboot or other programs. But I want to get into sort of what the program consisted of. I joined on my first day in 2020, joined on my first day of Porn Reboot, and it's all very helpful. So you get on a call with the founder, JK. He's really cool. He just tells you what to expect, and he puts he grounds you in reality, saying got to put the work in. Fantastic, right?
I'm guessing that might be quite different now. Like he's probably got like salespeople, but this is just your experience back then, right?
Exactly.
Just to clarify that.
Exactly. And there was a salesperson back then as well.
Yeah, sure.
But it was more. It's definitely different because of how I've later been on other discovery calls.
Yeah.
We get into that. But when it comes to the stuff that's in the program, one could say, well, I took it in 2020, it's 2026 now. It would be apparent that from the clients that have come from that program into our program, in addition to the testimonies that you can find in the public domain on, for example, the Porn Reboot YouTube channel, it would appear that the strategies that I had been doing back then are still relevant today, and we can go into them a little bit and perhaps highlight why some of these things are not as effective as we might have expected them to be. So one of the we can go through one by one. So what was awesome is when you're introduced into it, you're invited into a group, a community. So that's great, because we have that. We have a community group full of guys that you can relate to and that you share with, and it's like that, and it's great. And the sharing aspect is brilliant, because we're all sort of very relatable, and it really helps with that sense of bringing down the shame, knowing that you're not alone, knowing that you're in it together. There's other guys working on this problem, and that's great. So the first thing is, attached to that group, you have weekly coaching calls, right? We have that as well. Now, the difference between the coaching calls is it is different, because the one thing about Beyond Compulsion Academy, the BC method in particular, using the script, but the education around it, the calls in BCA are focused on the addicted part of the mind. They're focused on the addictive mechanism and how to deal with that in the critical moments of urges, directly, correctly, putting you in a position of strength and power. And it's always focused on getting you back to that principle, back into that space where you're dealing with that alone. All the focus is just, what are you going to do? How to handle facilitating the choice in those critical moments of urges, which we always feel. Every one of us feel that. The difference between our calls and the calls that I was having back in 2020 was that the focus was kind of a bit in different directions. On one week we'd come on and we perhaps learn about relationship management. Another week we'd come on and perhaps learn about nutrition and biochemistry and fitness. Another week we'd come on and perhaps talk about meditation and managing your temperament. All of these things are great, but it's not bringing us to the critical issue, which is focusing on the addictive mechanism itself and what to do in that moment. Because you've been through several things, you've read books, you've read a lot of stuff, you've even gone through your own program journey. So you can relate to this.
100%. Because I think there's just such a big misconception that the desire is coming from a lack of something else. So like maybe like a lack of meaning, lack of purpose, maybe your nutrition is poor, maybe you've not been working out, so you're eating shit and you're waking up at a bad time, you got these bad habits, and therefore you want to watch porn. But that's just bullshit. That's not the reason people want to watch porn. Like, the reason people want to watch porn is because they've got addicted from a young age. Like, how old are you? Like 13 or something?
Yeah, 12, 13, yeah.
12, 13, same as me. We start watching porn at the age of 12. And so you do that every night for 5 years without knowing the consequences. You're going to wire your brain to want to continue doing that. And it just becomes kind of part of your neural pathways that in X situation, you have Y desire. And therefore what you need to do is disconnect and change those neural pathways so that you can be in X situation and change the response to the Y desire. And then you get Z, and Z is life beyond compulsion, where it's okay, you have the desire, no problem, think it through rationally, change the neural pathways in that moment, you're good to go, you crack on with your life. Whereas what I was doing, a few years ago before Mary, who taught us both this, when you really break it down, what I was doing is I'd go on the no-fap streaks. I was meditating an hour every day. I was working out. I'd go on runs. I was trying to be as busy as possible, distract myself, all this stuff. And your life can get better in some ways by doing that. But then at 2 a.m, when you have the strong compulsive desire, or you hear some bad news from a family member, or you're stressed out because you've got some deadlines and you're not performing in the way you want to perform, or you've kind of messed up in some of these habits you're trying to do, and then the addicted part of the mind screaming at you, calling you a loser who's stupid and an idiot, and just go watch a bit of porn and blah blah blah, and you tell yourself you're not going to, and you resist it, and you start thinking, the urge is building up, what am I going to do in 3 days time when I got this situation and this urge is too high, and oh my god, and then bang, you end up relapsing. It's well, all right, all the self-improvement stuff, it's all good and well, but in that actual critical moment, as you say, you're going to be screwed unless you're specifically trained on dealing with that moment. And that is the big difference between our approach and basically everyone on the internet's approach, and just the thought of people making a shit ton of money out of approaches that aren't effective in stopping this behaviour. It's just a bit crazy, really. So that's why we're doing this, I suppose.
Yeah, no, it is spot on. One of the sort of threads that I feel that comes out of this is when it comes to the marketing around that porn reboot in particular, and when it comes to the content that's being posted, and the marketing, there's this thread where I've noticed that, and we've talked about this before, but there's this thread about, because effectively, if you have a culture where you're working on self-improvement as an indirect mechanism to stop your pornography addiction, if you're taking this route, and we'll get on to other stuff, because this isn't actually the core mechanism of the porn reboot thing, and this is mentioned specifically, but this is a thing that is sort of pushed in the program. And the issue with it is that even if you were to do excellent in all these fields, even if you were to excel in your diet, nutrition, your business, your relationship, but you're still stuck in a pornography addiction, all of those wins just feel blunted after you relapse, right? And this was something I learned very early on with you, because when you told me on one of these calls that we had together, I just realized it straight away. It's when I was sort of working on this thing, when I was working on this project and I felt good about it, then I relapsed. I felt crap about everything. Yeah. It just hit me. I was like, when you're in an addiction, it's hard to feel great about anything else, because you have these natural feelings, but these expected feelings such as hopelessness, helplessness, feeling that you don't deserve anything good, blunting all these victories that you have because you're still in a full-time pornography addiction, because you're still in that state of constant mental conflict. And so working on these things, you know, although they are definitely pushing you in the right direction, they, you know, if you're in a porn addiction, it's all blunted.
Yeah.
It's safe to say. But the sort of rationality behind this explanation that I've heard is that we are building a life around your pornography addiction in order for you to feel good about your life while you've got a pornography addiction. But it hasn't quite worked that way. I don't think it's worked that way for anybody.
No. I hear that.
I don't know.
Well, that's the thing, is like, you know, I've watched a couple of these testimonials on that YouTube channel by clients of the porn reboot system, or whatever it's called. And they talk about slip-ups and like the idea of, you know, it being good if someone's like making this improvement in their life and they're still having slip-ups. And it's this idea that it's like a never-ending journey of self-improvement, slip-ups, more self-improvement, more slip-ups, just kind of being, you know, that just accepting basically like, yeah, I'm going to be addicted to porn for life, but I'm going to be able to manage it. And I think this is the thing that I'd love to change in the culture we have online, which is get people to a position where they can see that they don't have to continue going on streaks, relapsing, and like doing all these things to try and reduce the frequency of relapse, when actually they can get to a position where you do stop, you stay stopped correctly, and you feel good about it. And yeah, like as you were saying, you're absolutely right. Like I could hypothetically leave the studio today, go home, masturbate, watch porn, and tomorrow I'm still going to have a business, I'm still going to have my girlfriend, I'm still going to have my family, I'm still going to have my friends, still going to have our clients, but I'm going to feel shit. Like, by the way, I'm not going to do that. But hypothetically, like, yeah, you could still have a great life on paper, but mentally, are you going to have a great life? Well, if you're still relapsing, then you're still in an addiction, so no. And do you think that's been like quite a big turning point for you, is seeing that like relapse is not part of recovery? And what would you like to say to our audience on this? Because I just think the whole slip-up thing is so big. Like even for like new clients in BCA, we sometimes hear them talk about slip-ups in like maybe the first week or two, and I really want to get people away from thinking in that way, because it's so harmful to people in the long run.
Yeah, precisely. So when we talk about this problem in BCA terms, we use the specific term addicted neural pathways. Addicted neural pathways has been built up, as Tom mentioned, you know, earlier. You've been engaging for years and years and years, since childhood, since you were 12 or 13, and over time your neural pathways, your brain has built a dependency for a mind mood altering experience over all this time to pornography, right? Because of, you know, the reward mechanism going on there. And once you become accustomed to that, you get into these sort of thought patterns and thinking patterns which facilitate the ease of engagement, or facilitating a mind that gets you easily prompted to engage. And the thing is, what keeps you in the addiction is engaging in the behavior, right? Because once you engage, you strengthen those neural pathways. The brain sort of unconsciously, subconsciously, you know, takes that sort of mental note on a biological level that this is what led to the relapse. These are the thought patterns which have been registered to get you to engage, and therefore we'll just keep prompting that as a natural organism would. If there's a reward to be earned, it will go down that neural pathway again and again and again and again. The number one goal of the addictive part of the mind is to get you to engage in your behavior. Okay, and so when we say relapse as part of recovery, what we mean is, yes, if you relapse, you're just spinning those addicted neural pathways right back up. The same thinking patterns that come back up will just keep coming back up, because it knows that that's the route to go down every time. And BCA is using the tools. It breaks that mechanism and it addresses it in a rational way and slows the whole process down so that you can think through the choice. It doesn't take the urge away. It just facilitates the choice in the moment within that urge, coming from a position of strength and power, using a tool. Yeah,
man. Like I remember before marrying this method, like the way my brain would work, or like the way the addictive part of the mind specifically would work, is I would relapse. I'd watch porn, masturbate, look at some crazy shit on like Instagram or YouTube or whatever, because I'd tell myself, first of all, I'd be like, oh, this isn't porn, so it's fine. Like, that was the junkie thought. And then afterwards, I remember I'd like write down, because I was like in the self-improvement sort of phase of my life, where I'd probably listen to someone like Emezi and think he was like a, you know, an Adonis or a god or whatever. Like, oh my God, look at this big six-pack dude. Like, I want to be like him. So I'd listen to these guys on the internet. And I'd like write down in my journal, like, okay, well, I relapsed because I didn't meditate today. Or I relapsed because I didn't do 100 push-ups or whatever. Right?
Yeah. And
then what that does is it trains the addictive part of the mind to believe that your success in overcoming porn addiction is conditional upon all these different things that you've got to do. And if you don't do all these different random things, then now you're helpless and you're screwed.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's exactly how the addictive part of the mind is going to keep you stuck in that cycle. So then you keep on relapsing and you keep on chasing this end goal of one day managing the addiction so successfully that the desires suddenly go. But that isn't the reality, because the only way you deal with this problem is by going through the desires, by experiencing the desires without acting on them, thinking it through in a rational way and changing those neural pathways. But if you carry on that like hamster wheel of self-improvement, what you'll discover is you'll just keep on telling yourself like, oh, I've slipped up, relapse is part of recovery. And then you end up in the addiction for the next like 50 years or whatever. And it's just like, you zoom out of that, you look back on your life and you're like, wow, I've never actually escaped. Like, I've just been in it the whole time, and just kind of reducing the frequency.
Exactly. And the penalty of, that is a very sort of emotional one. We've all been there, right?
Yeah.
We're all very accustomed to that, going through the shame of relapse, going through the shame of what we used to call a slip. Okay. It's just the same thing. I think this segues on to the next thing. That was a practice in porn Reboot, and this is more of like a core mechanism of JK and team's way of dealing with the problem, addressing the problem. There's a lot of other offshoots we can go down, but this is just another core one. So this is dealing with repressed emotions, and the tool to use this was a very cornerstone method within the program called the morning routine. So the morning routine is a sort of a worksheet, sort of a piece of paper, where you wake up and you got to list the things on your mind, the first things on your mind as soon as you wake up. So you're jotting down your emotions that you're feeling. I'm feeling whatever. I'm feeling this, feeling this, feeling this. So I would have data when I was going through it. I would have all sorts of data coming in. I'd be like, I'm feeling perhaps energetic. I'm feeling crap. A lot of the time I was like, I feel like I want to watch porn.
Yeah.
So I'm getting a mixture of data. And I think that was the intention of that, was to collect enough data so you can eventually show the coaches that these are the things that you experience on a daily basis, on a morning basis, every morning. And that would be the data to sort of drill down what the emotional sort of underlying repressed emotional state that you're in order to dig deeper on the issue and perhaps work around that as a means of trying to find out why you're watching pornography, how to then build upon that, how to then adjust your life, and so you can accommodate for getting over these emotional hiccups, repressed emotions rather. So that was sort of the core tool. Now, within that method, when it comes to emotions again, it's very critical, because when it comes to the addictive part of the mind as we know it, now I've gone through BCA, the other number one lesson I learned was you don't need a reason to engage.
Yeah.
And this is important because it doesn't really matter what you're feeling at any time of the day. That addictive mechanism, the addictive part of the mind, the moment of urges and discomfort can come at any time, with in any circumstance. Sometimes it's like, okay, sure, you might be feeling rejected or you might be feeling sad, and that might be a sort of a pattern where you might actually recognize, I do feel like I want to watch porn in these moments. Other times you just simply want to watch porn, right?
Yeah.
And so, like I said, you don't need a reason to engage. And I think even if I was to get all this data with the this feelings exercise with this morning routine. Even if I had all this massive data set and I had the emotions there, like what then? I would still want to watch pornography. Even if I'm feeling great, as I've done within the addiction before, like there are times when, majority of the time we're feeling pretty crap in the addiction, but there are times of, okay, you're having good stints in life. It didn't take the wanting to watch porn away. And so whether it doesn't matter what emotion you're feeling, if you don't know how to deal with compulsive desire in the moment in a way that you can address the urge and facilitate a choice through it in that moment from a position of strength and power, you're still just going to be in the same position.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it brings up a good sort of talking point, which is unanswerable questions and the addicted part of the mind trying to get people to adopt a position of helplessness. So when you're in an addiction, you've got these different parts in your mind. You've got the rational part, which is probably you listening to this. You want to stop engaging in this behaviour. Fair play to you for having that desire. Like, you want to stop. Like, that's great. But there's another part of your mind, and me and Joe have this part of our mind from time to time as well, and it's called the addicted part of the mind. And there's no shame here. Like, there's nothing wrong with you for occasionally wanting to watch porn. The only problem we've really got to solve is how do we deal with that part of the mind? Like, how do we respond to that part of the mind? And yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, you could be in a situation where you're walking down the street, see some attractive woman, you go back to your apartment and you're just thinking about this woman and now you want to watch some porn. Okay, all right, so what we're going to do, we're going to write down our emotions in that situation. It's like, that's just giving the addicted part of the mind what it wants, because the addicted part of the mind wants you confused. It wants you in a mental stance of, I don't know, I'm confused, like, analysing things. And nowadays, again, online, I think we've got a culture of like kind of overthinking things, overanalyzing things, always asking why about stuff. And a lot of the time it just feeds on those neural pathways of like helplessness and insecurity and unsureness, if that's a word. Whereas what we do in the BCA method is we train our neural pathways with the script to go, okay, well, what do I know? It's like fact 3, what I know. It's like, okay, I'm wanting this right now. It's very direct, just cutting through all the bullshit and the noise and getting straight into the nitty gritty of, there's this thing I want to do right now. I can do it. All right, here's going to be the consequences. I've got a choice, and that's all we need to do is just make a choice moment by moment. And it's quite simple, I guess, is the beauty of it. But a lot of takes online, I believe nowadays, that they overcomplicate things and misunderstand what the actual problem is. And then people end up feeling like, geez, there's something completely wrong with me because I keep on doing this thing that I want to stop. And then they go around in circles and then eventually they end up working with us.
Yeah, there's a lot of feelings of unsureness that I did notice.
For real.
There was one thing that you mentioned as well, like if you saw like something in public, so you saw someone attractive in public, and then that would sort of prompt you to like go back and then think about, ruminate to that and engage. There was this exercise within the Porn Reboot program where you'd have a rubber band, and this is on testimonials as well, right? Some guys actually show the rubber band in the testimonial. I had that, and how that would work is if you were catching yourself check out a woman or anyone in public or anywhere, you would have a rubber band on your wrist and you'd snap it, and sort of that would be like a mechanism in order to sort of prompt you not just back into the moment, but also have that as a sort of behaviour. What is the correct word? The reinforcement of that feeling, of that sharp pain feeling associated with that action that you did checking out a woman. But again, it's sort of like, let's say I did that. I've done the action of checking out the woman. I've done the rubber band. I still have the rumination going on. I'm still going to go back and think about it, and it's about dealing with that critical moment. That is the real critical moment in that situation, not that moment of when perhaps I should have slapped the rubber band. It's when you're back at your apartment or you're back in your place and you're feeling these urges, you're ruminating, feeling these urges. That is the critical moment that you want to deal with. Yeah.
It's interesting you say that. So I was on a discovery call with a guy last week who'd been referred to us by a previous client, and he'd been in a program for, I think he said 3 years. It wasn't Porn Reboot, it was actually a different one. But it was by a guy who is very, very well known in this space once again. I'd heard of him like 10 years ago, whatever. He was one of the first guys in the porn addiction recovery world. So he'd been in this program for like 3 years, and he had been taught that what you want to do is like create like you know, like when you lose at something and you've got to do a forfeit. It was kind of like something that you would have to do if you watch porn. And I think sometimes it was like, okay, if you watch porn, you're going to donate like £20 to a charity or whatever. I'm all for donating to a charity, but you don't need to like create some kind of additional consequence to engaging in a compulsive behaviour. Like, you don't need to slap yourself or like pay money to someone if you end up watching porn. In fact, I remember when I was younger, like making a bet with a friend, and it was like, if I watch porn over the next 90 days, I'm going to give you like 50 quid or whatever. Like, I remember doing that in sixth form at school. But it's like, you don't need to add any more consequences to that list. Like, the consequence is that you are going to have to, you know, deal with the shame yourself. Like, you're going to have to deal with the low energy or the low confidence or feeling shit for a few days or talking to someone and feeling like a zombie. And I think that idea is almost just feeding deprivation even further. It's kind of telling you like, oh, this thing you want to do is wrong. Like, you can't do that. And I think instead it's so key to help people feel empowered about their own choices and go, all right, there's this thing I want to do. I can do it. I'm free. I've got the choice. However, if I choose to do that thing, I'm the one who lives with the consequences, no one else.
I was going to say, I'd be broke as hell with the charity thing.
Mate, I would be in a lot of debt right now if I did those challenges often.
Like, minus 10,000, what are you saying?
For real. The relapse history stacks up, doesn't it? When you do know that for like 10 years.
You know, it's important as well, because I think when you're in the addiction as well, when you've been searching for answers for so long and you're fatigued by all this information, you're fatigued by going through these programs and perhaps not getting the result that you want. And it's awesome because it was my first after the discovery call I had with you. You know, we had the intro video back then with Mary and yourself, and you just cut right through the shame aspect of it, and that really helped me because there is nothing wrong with you for being in this situation. Honestly, like you've been engaging for years and years. You didn't ask to be in this situation. You didn't choose to be in it. You didn't understand the consequences this would lead to, and it just happens to be that you haven't had the help that you needed just thus far, and so you don't have to beat yourself up about it. And this is one of the crucial things that I learned joining BCA. But shame was obviously a big one, and like I said, even with the reinforcement, you're right. Even if you did implement that reinforcement, punishment, reward, whatever, you're still going to feel those negative consequences.
Yeah. And it makes me think, you know, like, because I feel like we've been quite direct today on today's podcast. But what's kind of cool is, like, if you're listening to this now and let's say you're struggling with porn, you've been doing some of the self-improvement-y kind of stuff that's pretty conventional, like I did, right, for 10 years, like Joe did. Well, let's say you've not joined Porn Reboot, you've kind of saved like a lot of money, and you've learned here today that, okay, well, even one of the best programs online with shit ton of good reviews, ton of testimonials, one of allegedly the best programs online is still, you know, struggling to get people results with the porn addiction. That kind of goes to show, all right, well, yeah, there isn't anything wrong with you, because even if you access the program that, like, you know, like costs like $10,000 or whatever, there's a good chance you still wouldn't get the result. And that isn't because there's like anything wrong with people, like their sexual desires are out of place. It's just, in my opinion, and, you know, in your opinion, I'm sure, Joe, once you're taught a different, you know, way of thinking and you understand how to deal with the addictive part of the mind, you see the world in a different way, and you understand that we've got like a porn addiction epidemic on our hands, and that is largely due to the misinformation and the poor advice online, and there just being so much bullshit about self-improvement that really has very little to do with actually that moment when you have the urge, and like how do you deal with your mind in that situation. And hopefully that can be a bit of a relief. You know, that's what I would like, because if I had have listened to this, I don't know, before I learned this method, I'd probably think this was bullshit, but then I'd maybe go listen to a few more episodes, maybe listen to some testimonials.
Yes.
And then I'd be like, okay, maybe these guys are onto something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, maybe we could have had like Mary on today as well, because I mean, she's worked in this like 36 years. So yeah, it'd just be nice for more people to like learn this method, I suppose, and see that it is possible to overcome this problem and know there is nothing wrong with them. And you don't have to keep being on this like hamster wheel of relapse streak and just going round and round in circles.
Exactly. And that's the key. Like, do save yourself a lot of time and pain. I definitely did this video. That's for sure. To clear out everything. One more thing that I want to sort of mention about this program was this is something that I want to sort of expand more into within my own content, is this notion that, and it comes from NoFap, it comes from NoFap Forum, but it was a big pillar in Porn Reboot as well, that an accountability partner is something that's needed.
Oh yeah.
So what I had later learned was, first of all, actually, let's put it this way. I met some really cool guys through this program, being assigned them as accountability partners, and it's crazy. You don't meet guys in this sort of way before, but they end up being like really cool guys that you could like connect with, and you have this problem in common, but they're actually good to chat to, right? Yeah. And they're there for you, and it's cool, with all the good intentions in mind. When it comes to the functionality of having an accountability partner, however, especially for porn addiction, things can get very difficult in terms of, first of all, there's the logistical issue of the whole situation. Are you available? Are you not? How many urges are you going to have on that day that you need to be accountable for? What's your situation currently? Are you on holiday? What's the what is the situation between you and your accountability partner in terms of, do you relate to each other in terms of perhaps like and that's not necessarily about your sexual taste or your taste in porn or whatever, but there's all these unanswerable questions that can come up, and there's all these scenario sort of variables that need to be handled.
Well, we had another client who'd done Porn Reboot who was saying on one of our group calls the other week how like he'd had an accountability partner from Porn Reboot who'd met through that, who'd been into the same kind of fetish, and they'd stayed in touch for like a few years. And then he joined BCA, and he decided to like cut ties with that guy because he just saw that guy was still like kind of spinning in circles with unanswerable questions, and it was actually doing a bit of harm to him in terms of him like just getting that clarity and that simplicity of, okay, I'm changing my own neural pathways for myself. I don't need anyone else. I don't want anyone else kind of in my business with this problem. It's just up to me.
Exactly. And that's the thing as well. Whatever you think whatever sort of the content you're watching, or whatever sort of let's say rabbit hole you're down in at the moment, right? Whether you're like gooning for 12 hours or you just like watch porn, let's say once every 4 weeks, but you still unhappy with it. I mean, I'd be the same. It doesn't matter what situation you're in. The mechanism is still the same. The process is still the same. None of the habitual sort of thing is like relevant to an extent in that sort of thing, right? There's a system and a process. Stick to it. It's it's universal in that sense, right?
Yeah.
The number one thing about accountability partners I want to bring up though is that it's the mental aspect. It's the mental positioning that you concede to. And this is what I learned in BCA, was that if you concede to the mental position that you need other people, that you can't handle this by yourself, if you concede to the position that I need an accountability partner because I'm helpless, because I can't handle this on my own, I'm not strong enough, I can't deal with the things when they come up on my own, it puts you in that position of weakness. It puts you into that mental position of your dependency on other factors around you. But the reality is you just need the right system, the right education, and the right mental mindset and frame and method. Something repeatable, something you could deploy anywhere, something that you don't have to think about what you need to do. You just need to do the thing in order to facilitate a choice from a position of strength and power when you have an urge. No accountability partner needed. No one else needed. You're strong enough to do this. You're definitely strong enough to do this. Watching this video right now shows that you have the initiative to resolve this problem. That's all we need. I mean, as far as me and Tom are concerned, that you are strong enough. accountability partners on that mental aspect is a key thing that's so underlooked. Yeah.
100%. And like the deprivation as well, like you just end up feeling like you can't do these things, and you have to tell your accountability buddy.
Exactly.
So then even if you're successful, like even if let's say you go like 2 or 3 months because you got an accountability buddy and you think that's going to help you, you don't watch porn for a little while, it's going to be kind of hard to like 100% enjoy that process.
Yeah.
So in the back of your mind, you're kind of still doing it for someone else a little bit.
Exactly.
Which isn't really the one. Like I've obviously done a lot of streaks in the past. I'd always end up relapsing. This was before Mary, and like a lot of the time I would be kind of thinking to myself, oh well, I can't relapse because then I'm gonna have to like reset my streak on like this app where I kind of had the accountability of the community on a certain app. So I was on like Brain Buddy, and I'd think like, oh well, I can't like let my tree die on Brain Buddy. I can't let all these people know I'm on like day 0.
Yeah.
And it just like, it sucks. Like you feel like you can't do something, and you want to do it more, and you just feel a bit shit. And it's like that feeling of deprivation. So.
Because you're in the future thinking, you're like, oh, what are they gonna say? Oh, are they gonna tell me, message me, what happened? Yeah. And you're in that shame cycle, and you're like, oh, I gotta tell these guys that I failed, and these are the future thinking and stuff as well. And to bring it back to accountability partners as well, you know, I've mentioned this before, but there's like, you know, the scenarios, these micro scenarios, right, where you have, let's say you're feeling an urge at 6 p.m. You call your accountability partner, perhaps because you're talking with them on the phone, you get into a position of being in a present moment where it just organically you're just sort of, you didn't engage and you've outlasted the urge for that amount of time. Get off the phone with him. Yeah. Great. You've gone across that urge. A freaking hour later, the urge comes again and it's stronger, and it's like, oh well, do I call him again? Am I going to bother him? Am I going to seem a bit like weird? Or am I going to, you know, all these unanswerable questions in your mind comes up, puts you in that position of helplessness, puts you in that position of, I'm just too overbearing, more self-talk, more. And subsequently relapses are very easily facilitated.
Definitely.
That position,
Yeah. And I think as well, like, it just takes that power away from yourself. Like, you've been in BCA now for like 12 months, right?
Yeah, like a year now.
Okay, a year now. So, I mean, I can't remember a time when you've messaged me during an urge. Like,
I know.
Maybe in the first month or two, I can't remember. But if you have, it was at least like 9 or 10 months ago, I would imagine.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
I don't know if you ever have, though. I don't think you have. And like, if you had have done, I still probably would have been like, all right, well, just go use your script. It's like, you know what to do. And like, that's the difference. It's like, I would love to see more guys taking on the responsibility of going, okay, this problem is for me and only me. You know what? I want to solve this because I'm going to gain these benefits. I'm going to choose to do the work. I'm going to get the education. I'm going to sort my shit out myself. And it kind of just be something that you're doing as an individual to improve your own life. And I think this is the nice thing about, you know, BCA. Obviously, we're going to kind of plug it a little bit, but the truth is, like, as much as the community is great, we've got the wins, you know, we got the exposing the Addicted Part of the Mind post, we've got the group calls now. There's a great, like, community feeling there. Everyone in the program is just doing it for themselves. And, like, truth be told, if someone messages me and, they're asking for help during an urge, I am just going to say, go use your script, because I have no power or control over the results of our clients. Like, your result in terms of, you know, being here now after like 12 months, that's 100% on you. You know, me and Mary can provide some education, but it's up to every individual to go use that education for themselves and not be reliant on me, not be reliant on Mary, not be reliant on other community members. It's up to everyone to take the education, do what they want with it, and crack on. And that's the way it should be, in my opinion. That's the way you get like empowered guys who are feeling good about this situation.
Yeah, because I think it's made quite clear in the course that we have. And by the way, in the course, when we're in group calls, for example, or we're posting on the group, we talk about urges all the time. Like, it's like we share like about urges in the public spaces where it's all out there. Like, everything is very open conversation. It's great. Like, everything's really relatable, and no one bats an eye, because it's just so normal. Like, it's just addiction, right? It's just normal. And I think the one thing that you and Mary told I think you told me, that's for sure. I think you told everyone, really. It doesn't matter like whether we choose to engage with it. It's not going to affect you.
Yeah.
It's like, it's our project. We're doing it for ourselves. It's our work. It's our project of having that strength in our lives, having that integrity in our lives, coming from a position of power that you always had. You've always had it. It's just that there's just these mental blocks that just haven't been pieced together, and when they come together, it's just, you can't look back. You can't look back. And
100%. And like, don't get me wrong, I want people to win, because the more people I get winning, the more podcasts I can do like this, and that's going to be good for the business and get more people involved. So I want people winning.
There are more people here,
but at the same time, I have no control over what people get up to, and that's true for me as well personally. You know, like when I first learned the method, when I stopped using it, that was on me. Like, I had to take that responsibility. And like, as much as Mary might have wanted to come and like help me out or whatever, there was nothing Mary could do or say for me to, you know, change what I chose. And fortunately, I chose to just go back to the first principles, use the script again, and then crack on from there to turn things around. Yeah,
it is. We were talking about this earlier as well. Like, it literally is the situation where like the tool is simple. The education is there for you. You give the tools, give the education. You're focused on one thing always. When it comes to the group calls, we're talking about one thing. When it comes to the talking in the community posts, talking about one thing. One-on-one WhatsApp chat, one thing. Yeah. If you just stop doing that thing, that leads to the result that you don't want. Just keep doing that one thing.
Yeah. Simplicity, man, is so key. And like, it is weird how that works. How like it is just a case of do one thing to change your neural pathways. Yeah. But I think to really understand that, it almost has to be a bit of an experience of like using the script and feeling the desire without acting on it, and just seeing where that gets you. And then you start to believe like, okay, I'm starting to feel better now. And then you want to keep doing that thing, and then it just becomes like a cycle, really.
Exactly, because what you got to, I think, is really critical to people understand. It takes time for neural pathways to sort of adjust, even though, granted, the simplicity of the method, if we've been through years of other paid programs, years of NoFap, we've got to install the new software. The new software takes time to install in the brain, right? But it's quicker than you think it is. And with repeated action, it just comes, as long as you keep repeating it, the faster it's going to install, right? And I think this attests to the method as well, because when it came to the Porn Reboot program, we had video modules, and we had a lot of information about different things, different tools, different worksheets that we all had to fill out. And sure, these tools are useful in terms of getting clarity and working on other parts of your life or adjacent areas of your life, for example, relationships, even like sexual health. There was a big module, for example, on the importance of practicing Kegels just as a general practice. No one can sort of refute that. Like, it's a good thing to do. But it's sort of this, when you have like this package of information as a product, when there's just so much information that's fragmented, that you really have to solve, you have to think about it as if you're solving a puzzle to piece it all together, how it's going to work for you. It's not built for porn addicts, right? We just want something simple that we can focus on, one thing, one line, one action that we can just repeat over and over and over and over again, not have to think about anything else. It's that's built for addicts. That's built for porn addicts. Yeah. Not trying to work things out. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's, last year I learned something called Occam's razor, right? And it's basically just like the most simple solution is usually the best one. And I guess I've found that to be true so far in life.
Same, yeah.
It's nice, but yeah. Cool, we'll wrap it up here. Hopefully you can make your own decision after listening to this on what path you want to go down personally, whether you want to learn a method that actually deals with your own mind and deals with the urges in that exact moment you have that compulsive desire, or whether you want to carry on maybe going down self-improvement. I'm sure most people listening to this now, hopefully we've done enough podcasts to get people thinking a little bit of a different way and seeing that, you know, with a bit of critical thinking, we can all overcome porn addiction. We don't have to do what's now normalised in society. We can all be free. And I really do think this podcast is specifically for those people who want to do things a bit different, who are maybe a bit awake to the fact that what's going on in society right now isn't particularly healthy. There's a lot of porn addiction around. It is pretty epidemic, and a lot of solutions are kind of based in ideologies which reinforce neural pathways of helplessness. Hopefully that makes some sense to you guys. I'm sure it will. Otherwise you probably wouldn't be listening. Any final words from yourself, Joe? And where can people find you as well? Because I know you've got your own YouTube channel and stuff, right?
Yeah, so at Joey on Compulsion. So I feature with Tom regularly. So like you'll just find it in the links or whatever. But yeah, I've got if you want to like talk about more, perhaps you came from Porn Reboot, for example, or any other paid program. I love to handle questions. I like to handle tough questions to ask about this problem in particular, because I know that people don't want to waste time trying to figure this out anymore. So like when it comes to all the questions that you have about it, I'm the guy to sort of answer those and handle all that. And you can get on a WhatsApp call with me, so we could just talk for 30 minutes, see if you're a right fit for not just BCA, but just answer doubts, because doubt's a big thing, because it's such a messy kind of space to be in, and it's like really, confusing. Right. Yeah. In terms of the podcast, there's a lot of podcasts going on. Listen to when you're cleaning, listen when you're cooking, listen to when you're on a walk. Just listen to them. Just get the right mindset in, and you'll feel a lot better after it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Our last client as well on this podcast. So our last podcast was with someone who did have a bit of a call with Joe, because he'd done the program that we've talked about today. He had a call with Joe, then joined BCA, and I don't know how long it's been that, he's been living his life without porn, but he came on our last podcast, talked about that experience. So
super proud of him.
Yeah, if it's possible for him, it's possible for anyone else, and hopefully this reaches one or two guys who feel like they're a bit stuck after doing the porn reboot and are feeling a bit desperate, or like, oh God, like there's something wrong with me, and they want something a bit different, and to know like, yeah, you actually can solve this. You don't have to stay stuck in that self-improvement sort of hamster wheel of doing the wrong things that aren't actually going to deal with the addictive neural pathways. So yeah, cool. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Goodbye.